watching making porridge. I a couple of weeks ago watched a film called The Golden Spurtle. I don't know if you've seen it. It is a film about the world porridge making competition that happens in Scotland every year. I'm struggling to get into the packet of porridge right now. And it's about the kind of level of obsession that people get into to make the most perfect bowl of porridge in the world for that year. It's really lovely. True porridge is only ever 3 ingredients, which is oats, salt, I was about to say sugar and that was wrong, oats, salt and water. So there's no milk in true Scottish porridge. Anything like that gets added at the end of the process, once the porridge is already done. And so all of the invention has to come from the choice of oats. So people use different kind of oats, like jumbo oats, porridge oats, and the sort of steel cut oats, which are a bit nuttier, a bit chunkier. You weren't expecting a masterclass in porridge this morning, were you? And the technique. So ever since then, I've been obsessing about my porridge because it's made me really want to eat it for a start. It was just such a lovely documentary and it made porridge look like the most delicious food known to man, which I mostly think it is. But also, it's made me really think about whether I'm doing it right. I often do put milk in my porridge as I cook it, I'm afraid, which is, I know, a terrible thing. But I think it means that I don't want to sweeten it afterwards, which I also think is a good thing. I don't have a particularly sweet tooth. Anyway, I'm making my porridge, I'm putting my pinch of salt in and getting it on the stove. It's really funny how these, films, these things that we watch and read really affect us. We tend to think that we're independent thinking people, but just 1 hour watching a documentary has led to this endless obsession of making porridge. I think it's partly because, as you can hear, I've been a bit under the weather and porridge seems like the answer to an awful lot of questions right now when you don't have a lot of energy and it feels like a whole meal. And this is actually, unintentionally, a great intro to my guest this week, Oliver Burkeman, who many of you will know from his books about, kind of a balance. He kind of looks at a balanced way of optimizing your life, I think. I really enjoy his work because he has always got this sort of constraint in what he says. He's really interested in how we can live well, and the sense of mortality is always present in his work. We only have a limited number of days on this earth, and therefore how do we live well within it? But the answers are rarely we must go to extremes and do everything we can to live a fully optimised life. There's forever a sense that he's like, well, some of this is worth it, but actually you have to accept a little bit of bumpiness along the way. I think that his subtitles really reflect that as well. I enjoy his subtitles more than his titles. There's something very expansive about them. I hate writing subtitles myself. Some of his subtitles include how to become slightly happier. Not happy, guys, we are English here. Slightly happier. And get a bit more done. Not too much. It's all very balanced. And my favourite one of his subtitles is Happiness for People Who Can't Stand Positive Thinking. I will leave those like a puzzle for you to work out which one matches which book. But yeah, he's the author of 4,000 Weeks, which I know loads of you will have read. The Antidote, and most recently Meditations for Mortals. He did come and talk on my book club on Substack about that. And that is a really great little kind of manageable book. I love a manageable book, which suggests regular reflection points to just really consider exactly how we approach this life. We need more of Oliver in this world. He wrote, and we talked about this during the interview, for 14 years, a column called This Column Will Change Your Life in The Guardian, which I always read and always found really enlightening. I can't imagine doing something for 14 years. Honestly, I'm such a quitter. And he now has a brilliant newsletter called The Imperfectionist, which if you don't subscribe to, please do. It comes roughly fortnightly and always just, again, takes his really considered approach to optimization. You know, it's like he takes all of the self-help writers that we kind of read and think, ooh, that's a bit much, and synthesizes it into something that can actually be applied to real lives and to people who know that they're not going to be a superhuman, but actually would like to make sure they're just taking the shortest path to what they want to do. I was so thrilled to talk to Oliver. He has this very, I'm going to say slightly Spartan attitude to resting, which I find really fascinating because I think it mimics a lot of my own thoughts too. But there's also a lovely, lovely part of this interview, which is that he's pretty happy where he is. He's moved to a really lovely place, which he'll describe. And he's found that actually life is how he dreamed of it being whenever he was fantasising about a retreat before. I love it that it is Oliver Burkeman who has figured out where to live, because if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be him. He was going to apply his very rational approach to it and very considered approach. But I think it's a gem, and I really loved the conversation, and I hope you will too. I will see you back afterwards when hopefully my porridge will be ready. Oliver, welcome to The Clearing. It's a delight to have you here. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me.
So I'm going to be asking you to share your kind of fantasy of retreat. And I just thought that you would be a really appropriate person to ask this, because you are the go-to guy for not idealized living, but how to figure out how to do it the best you can, but in balance. So I think you're going to give us a very practical retreat. Is that true?
I think so. I have to say, considering the questions that you mentioned you'd be asking, sort of had the effect of throwing me into a existential crisis, but hopefully it'll be a useful and a profitable existential crisis for us all.
I think it does that more than we attended, actually. But it's like an unintended side effect of this podcast that everyone's like, oh, wait, I'm not sure if I know how to do this. But maybe that's revealing in itself. Are you the sort of person that goes off on retreat, like when you're trying to finish a book or when you need a break, or do you tend to soldier on?
The answer is that I definitely was that kind of person. And I think I am on some level, you know, introverted, very happy with my own company, benefiting from not only being able to put in a few hours of writing, but also then go on a long walk to think about it, which day-to-day family life is sometimes not compatible with. I think I am going through a phase. I don't know if we want to dive immediately into the treating you as my therapist, but I think we're going into a phase. I'm going into a phase where actually it's important for me in the work I'm doing at the moment, not like to find ways for it to exist in the midst of everything else. You know, I've actually found that some of my sort of try to block out the world, impulses don't help so much at the moment. And, so you end up carving out some special week's time and then finding it so high pressure that it's not even very helpful and all sorts of things. So I'm actually in a sort of a phase of non-retreat, but that doesn't mean I don't mean I think I've outgrown it or anything. I think it's just a seasonal thing in itself.
No,
maybe.
well, I sometimes think the more sort of desperate you are for a break, the more ineffective it is for any creative work. I mean, I don't think I've ever managed to write a word if I've gone on retreat, which doesn't mean to say it's not valuable, but
no,
it's not how I write. I write in the weird cracks between life. That's the only way I can do it.
Yeah. So I think there's certainly on the specifically like creative work output front, I'm not sort of kidding myself anymore, or currently, that as long as I can get a certain number of days somewhere, then I'll be, absolutely.
I mean, you wrote a column for what I looked on, I looked on your Wikipedia page today because I managed to text you halfway through to say, we did the same degree at the same time, and got frightfully excited about it. But so, you wrote a column for The Guardian for 14 years, I think. So that must have taken some real discipline and rhythm.
Absolutely shocking to realize it was that long. When I finished doing it, among some very lovely notes I got was somebody who said she'd grown up reading it. And I was like, it was the first time it ever occurred to me I'd done anything long enough for somebody else to grow up with it.
That's quite terrifying.
That was quite terrifying. It did take discipline, but on the other hand, it's it's a deadline-driven situation where it's just going to happen because it sort of has to. It's not necessarily very internal discipline. It's more like tetchy emails from my editor kind of discipline. So I always say, like, I'm really glad for the experience of like, okay, it's Monday lunchtime, you don't have a good idea for the column this week, you have to use one of your bad ideas, right? Because it teaches you a lot about how you don't really know what is a good idea or a bad idea anyway, and until you dive into it, or certainly not what people are going to respond to positively or negatively. And I wrote all but my most recent book. I wrote like all the while stopping to do that for a part of the week as well. And I think that was probably good, even though I got very sort of stressed and annoyed by it at times.
Sometimes when you have more to do, writing comes out better, I think. You just can't think so hard about it. I find that if I start overthinking, I'm dead. I can't do a thing. I'm trying to make art then, and actually you just need to write words.
This is so true. And actually it's something that I think I'm making progress on this just in the last months, but it's something I've had to sort of relearn since not doing that column anymore. And I do this email newsletter, which actually, does take that kind of some of that discipline, but
The Imperfectionist, which we should name.
Correct. But it's not paid, and therefore I have allowed myself to shift the schedule when I need to. It's kind of lethal in that respect, the sort of freedom. But I think I'm good. I'm getting to a good place now, sort of rebuilding that feeling of like, you've just got to do it. You've just got to do it, even when there isn't that sort of outside constraint. And a big part of that is like not trying to put the rest of my life on hold when there are deadlines present. It gives them too much power and causes them to feed into my, psychodramas instead of just being one other item to deal with in the course of the day, like, the plumber's coming round and I've got to do that and go do the school run and, I'm going to do a few hundred words on that thing. It's all much more approachable, that size.
Whenever I see people writing books about writing, I always think, well, the only tip that I would actually have, I couldn't fill a book with it. And it's like, well, just try and park your neurosis somewhere for like a few hours a day.
Or kind of turn your subject matter into an exploration of your neuroses as well, which
is what I do very effectively.
Right? I think we've both got some aspects of that. Yeah.
You can build a career from that. It's fine. Right? Okay, so welcome to the clearing, but it's a clearing of your choosing. So you're going to explore your ideal retreat for me here, but what landscape do we find ourselves in first of all? Where would it be?
So I've got to just tell you about the existential crisis that this triggered briefly before pinning this down. The problem is, you see, that we live now in the part of the world that I would have given as an answer to this 4 or 5 years ago. So we live in the North York Moors in northern England, having moved from Brooklyn, New York, where we still have a lot of connections and links and family and friends. And so it's kind of really interesting to sort of grapple with this question, because I'm right here in the kind of bleak northern landscapes that I sort of have always really valued, and can talk about those a bit. But I figured, like, I had to come up with, what does it mean to get away from it all when you are in that sort of a landscape? And obviously one of the big fascinating things about moving here has been living regular life in this context, and, you know, having a social life and engaging with community and doing all the things you need to do, when I might previously have come to a bed and breakfast or a holiday let for a week or something.
What difference does that make? I'm really curious, like being in that dream, like actually living in that dream landscape. Do you appreciate it the same?
I don't stop appreciating the landscape. It's a landscape that you know, not everybody loves. So it's not like sort of being in love with a very specific kind of image of paradise. Like I knew what it was like here, and I knew and it's pretty sort of what am I trying to say? I think one of the answers to your question is just that it's much more about other people than it would be if I was off for a few days or a week or more of the sort of thing that I take us to be talking about here. It's obviously in certain ways completely mundane, you know, so all the life admin and persists with some extra inconveniences, like you can't go down to the store on the corner while the dinner's still cooking and get the ingredient you forgot, because the distances are different. You're sort of really reliant on neighbours in certain ways that you're not in the big city, and then in another way it's kind of, I've had to put a lot more conscious effort into having a social life, because you've got to sort of, you know, find the right people, go drive to where they are, you know, do all these things, and it comes much more easily in Brooklyn. But then again, the downside of that is it's not necessarily so intentional or thought through, and sometimes you can find yourself, you know, whiling away evenings with people that you wouldn't necessarily have chosen to. If any of my Brooklyn friends are listening to this, I'm not talking about you. Lots of cherished friends there as well. But, you know, there's that sort of not quite having to think it through
you stumble across people in a way that you wouldn't in a sort of isolated rural community. Yeah.
But also, like, we're in a situation where we have public footpaths across amazing land basically out of the door, and you don't need to go anywhere in a car to get to them. And I haven't become blasé about that so far, 4 years in. I do still spend a chunk of almost every day walking on them. And, you know, it's amazing that you can do that for 45 minutes instead of having to make a day trip out of it. But I haven't become blasé about that. I'm much more attuned to one of the points of your oeuvre. I'm much more attuned to changing seasons than I ever was. It feels like micro seasons as well, right? You can sort of drive a particular route or walk a particular path, and it's just completely different from one week to the next. So I think that's all still alive for me. But you're going to make me specify a place that I would get away from.
Yeah, and I was about to say, I'm expecting an equally kind of bleak, windswept landscape.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one thing I could do is kind of deliberately mess with the conceit here and say that what I would do if I had a stretch of time completely to myself like that is, rent a flat in central London and make sure to see
I would love that.
all of my friends from there or in Brooklyn. Every hour of the day that I possibly could. I mean, they'd all be at work, so it probably is not going to work.
Yeah, but it's all right. It's a fantasy, so they could actually all happen to have a week off at exactly the same time as you.
So that is present in my mind. But no, I think that there's still the other thing that happens. If I'm sure you have some experience of this, based on what I understand of where you live. Even if you come to a place that is to some extent away from it all, there's still always a lot further away from it all that you can.
It starts to not feel away from it all because you start to know people. And in fact, the smaller, I mean, I've always lived in small towns, but the smaller the town you live in, the higher the chance of bumping into someone you know as soon as you leave your front door. And actually, I think a city could feel a lot more solitudinous quite often than a small town like mine. It feels packed with people that know me.
Yeah. No, I think what I would add, so I think my sort of the fantasy setting that I'm going to settle on, it's not like an existing one in a book or something, but would have a lot of the similarities of where we live, but it would be a sort of completely isolated cabin at the top of a hill, and it would integrate the sea. We are only sort of 40 minutes drive from the coast here, but that's long enough for one never to quite get around to visiting it. And I think that's what I would add. So this would be a cabin overlooking a beach. It would still be very sort of, it would be the North Sea.
Oh yeah,
no, it wouldn't be the Caribbean.
It's got to be a little bit grey and churning.
Yeah, I think that we share some tastes in that regard as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I love anything that feels too easy. Like I love beaches, but I hate sandy beaches, for example.
Right.
I am not interested in the sea being too warm. Like that's just whatever. I could have a bath. That'd be fine if I wanted.
It's interesting,
to
isn't it? No, this is so interesting, and it's like a sort of it's a point of disagreement in my marriage. Interestingly, which leads to so I've spent plenty of time in the last few years in warmer climes, and I think it's probably useful to have my sense of superiority about blustery, cold, remote northernness
We're
challenged.
hardy.
A little bit. Yeah, but like, why is it so difficult to enjoy? There's a brilliant cartoon that I've mentioned one or two places before, but cartoon in the New Yorker. I'm blanking right now on the name of the cartoonist, which is annoying. But it's a picture of a man and a woman in like beachwear sitting on a sandy, warm beach. And the man is looking very sort of restless and antsy. And the woman is replying to him saying, "We are doing something, you're just not good at it." And I think this really touched me a little bit. I felt a bit too called out because I do think, yes, I'm not a sunbather, but I'm not convinced these days that that's necessarily anything to be proud of.
I don't know how to do it. I want a rock pool to paddle in, but
yes, exactly.
I mean, I get associated with being the person that tells people to take a rest. I'm hopeless at it. I cannot sit still. I've never been able to sit still. Rest for me is nothing to do with lying on a sun lounger. Like I get so bored so quickly. And yes, you can read a book on a sun lounger, but I feel like I can read a book more effectively indoors. I'm not sure that reading on the beach is the right thing to do. And I'm just not interested in any of the things that come with that kind of holiday. I want some ruggedness.
I think, I'm on the same page. And I think that contrast is, this is a well-known point about hygge and the sort of, and various different Northern European cultures, traditions of coziness. But I think you do need, I'm someone who does need to get a bit cold and chilly in order to benefit from the warmth. There's a passage early on in Moby Dick, and let me tell you, I'm only familiar with the passages of Moby Dick that are early on, where the central character is like staying in some like lodging house at the coast before boarding the whaling ship. And there's a whole sort of meditation on how the optimal setting in which to be is like toasty warm inside a bed in a room and an area that is otherwise freezing cold.
That's completely right.
Because otherwise otherwise there's no value and enjoyment in the warmth.
So your cabin perched on top of a cliff. It's not in the summer, is it? You're not retreating in the summer. There's going to be a gale blowing outside and rain lashing against your window that will abate if you want to go outside, presumably. But yeah.
Yes, no, that will definitely happen. I don't mind rain, but I'm not going to make the case for wanting to only be in the rain. No, I think it'd probably be sort of late autumn, be around about the time we're recording this, maybe.
Yeah, lovely.
Very end of autumn, beginning of winter.
How wonderful. And does your dream cabin have kind of mod cons, or is it very basic and Spartan?
I mean, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because I think that at first I want to say, oh no, very Spartan. And then, there are a few things that I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't want, like, constant hot water.
Yeah.
And electricity.
Rainfall shower.
Yeah. I think I will probably choose for it not to have Wi-Fi. I think I'll choose for it not to be connected to the internet in that sort of, roping yourself to the mast kind of way to make it better. I once, several years ago, well, quite a few years ago now, before our son was born, me and my wife we both had writing we needed to do, rented I think it was, an Airbnb or whatever in Donegal in Ireland. And it was kind of more old school than we'd quite realised.
You couldn't get
right. You couldn't get an internet signal unless you went. You couldn't get a phone signal unless you drove down into the village, and you burned peat in the fire to keep it
that is
warm, and probably did very bad things for you in a respiratory sense. I just wrote a chapter of a book, The Antidote it was actually years and years ago, that had been I'd been stuck on just completely smoothly in a few hours every morning and spent the rest of the time working. Just no stress was encountered. And I fear it may have had something to do with the absence of the internet.
I think you might be right. There's a running dispute in my house because if left to my own devices, I will book a holiday cottage every year that has no Wi-Fi, because that's my dream. I want to actually escape for a while. And my son is now on to me, and he now checks very carefully, like, is there Wi-Fi? And it's like, oh, come on. But for him, a week without Wi-Fi is like a night without stars, But so no Wi-Fi, but, a nice shower. We'll let you have electricity, that's no problem. And how are you going to eat while you're there? Would you like us to deliver you baskets of wonderful food? Would you like Just Eat on speed dial? Or are you going to cook?
I probably am going to cook. I'm not a good cook, but it doesn't matter if it's just oneself. That's an interesting thought. Maybe I wonder why I think that. But I do find something sort of meditative, or it's a nice part of the rhythm of the day to cook. What it's bringing to mind actually is a point about time that's struck me in recent, I guess, years. There's a strong sense in the sort of conventional literature of time management and productivity about this idea that, you should aim to sort of, if you possibly can, if you've got the money, you should pay to have all the things that would fill up the gaps of time
done for you or delivered
done for you. And you can see where I'm going with this, right? I actually, it doesn't make sense, right? I actually benefit from, I don't want to claim that I embrace every single item of housework, and I probably shouldn't even probably dicing with controversy offline now if I claim to do completely my fair share. Who knows? But I do think that, like, folding laundry, cooking food, those sort of, like, it's a cliche, but it is crucial for the part of, especially for the part of your brain that is chewing over the creative stuff as well, to have those.
It's a weird break, isn't it? But also
times.
there's something about being connected to the sort of mechanics of life. I'm not sure if I want to. I mean, I'd like to leave some of it behind, obviously, but I don't want to leave it behind altogether. And I wouldn't want my food cooked for me all the time. Like that sort of dislocation between what I fancy eating and what I create would be too much for me. I really like to be able to just meet my own needs sometimes in that way.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, I don't want to get too sort of ultra traditionalist or even sort of evolutionary psychology about it, but it does feel like there are certain tasks to do with basic living, cooking, very, very simple kinds of things that we've done on some level for hundreds of thousands of years that are central to that. Because when I do think about what I would like to instantly get rid of, it's actually kind of the things that fall into the bucket of life admin.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying at the moment to find a plumber to fix a water leak because the water company's told me I'm obliged to do this in 14 days. Right. So suddenly this is here, and it's all. I mean, I think they'll give me some. I think they appreciate how hard it is to find plumbers in the UK in 2025. But anyway, so this is like a sort of big thing that's like landed itself in the middle of my life in an annoying fashion. And yes, it would be absolutely lovely to have somebody else just do all of that. But that's different. I would still want, in that situation, to at least sometimes cook a meal.
Yeah. I'd like a bot to reply to all my emails for me, but with exactly my words and me kind of absorbing everything with.
Well, there are people who say that this is basically what the situation that's coming to pass. But no, you want it. You want it somehow to go fully through. No.
I wonder how this affects your work, actually, because we do seem to be reaching a point where many of the tedious tasks that we haven't wanted to do, or the kind of creative tasks that we actually found really difficult, like writing an article, which seems okay in advance, but actually when you sit down to do it, it seems like the most terrible idea you ever had.
Yes.
We're reaching a point where we could actually devolve that to somebody else or to something else, to AI, to a different kind of consciousness altogether. Does that take your work in a certain direction? Because actually, you have been skirting this area for ages, as in thinking about where that balance exactly lies and what we should throw away and what we should change, and actually trying to be more realistic about it. Do you feel like this is a new era?
I do a bit, and I'm still definitely trying to figure out how I think and feel about it. But I have generally, I think if you were sort of watching my output on social media or something, you would have me down as a curmudgeon and an opponent to AI. I don't know that I'm completely implacable on that. The question that for me it really flags up, at least in the context of creativity, right, is why are you doing this, right? Yeah. And why is one doing anything that one does with one's time? And it's very easy reading the sort of advice and thoughts from pro AI, the sort of real hyper enthusiasts, to get to this point of thinking, well, it's like, so supposing I could do all that and it didn't damage the audience for my work or my income streams, like even holding those factors constant, what would I do with my life at that point? That just seems like, there's a certain kind of effort that is just the whole point. Definitely it has its extremes, and I can become insufferable when I'm being made miserable by it. But there's something about the engagement with the work that is the point. And I think it's also true of most email communications and things like that, right? It's like I do not use AI to phrase emails, even in a context where I could read over them and check that it was fine by me, because it just seems like we're supposed to be communicating here between like one consciousness to another, and Like it just seems to, in other words, I think that the experiential problem would be for me as well, right? It's not just that the people I'm emailing are not getting a full sort of experience of me writing an email.
There's something very existential about life feeling gritty and things being awkward and difficult, actually. And as much as we crave the escape from them, I think it's actually very important to do it. It's very hard to make that case, though.
No, it's really hard to make the case.
I think you're the man to do it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just trying, what I'm thinking is, what are the situations where I don't think that's, like, what are the situations where that doesn't apply? And I haven't done this, but I've heard people, extolling the virtues of ChatGPT to phrase, kind of to get the right phrasing for letters that you want to have some legal force, or to persuade a utilities company to do the thing they said they do, right? I can't think that I would stand on ceremony too much if I was getting that needed that kind of functional writing. I use a AI-powered search engine to connect me to other resources that are written by humans, and I don't feel like I've crossed the boundary into relying on AI there, because I'm just using it as a stepping stone. And if it's the best way to find the video where the guy shows me how to reset the problem on my car that was annoying the heck out of me last week, like, should I be resisting that too?
Yeah.
Because if I was I don't want to be like the sober alcoholic who's then saying, well, like this, I'll make an exception here, and then your whole sort of sobriety journey is
slippery slope.
Is ruined, right? But on the other hand, it just seems like, I suppose what's going on in those moments is like, there's a very clear why am I doing this? It's totally functional. I would like this aspect of my life not to exist, but it does. So actually, efficiency, getting there as fast as I possibly can, is the goal in those moments. And it wouldn't be for someone who was deeply absorbed in the workings of cars and really wanted to put some of their life energy into gaining that understanding, which is completely legitimate, just happens not to be my personality. And so I think that's the question. It's the why, isn't it?
That is. It's so hard to unpick, though. But anyway, this is very, very far away from retreating. So I'm going to pull us back.
I probably would need a working car to get there. But anyway, or maybe it's well served by public transport.
I mean, we have a sort of taxi delivery service. So,
okay, cool.
So you don't have to drive there yourself if you don't want to, which I'm always seeking to avoid driving because I'm bad at it. So what are you doing while you're there? Are you going to, like, go for great windswept walks along the cliffs, or is there a project you'd take to a space like this that you could complete on your own?
Certainly be going on walks along windswept cliffs. I think in this fantasy retreat, I am not racing to meet a deadline on something. That seems to be the opposite of retreating in a way. But I do think that I would want to spend a significant portion of this time sort of in the world of ideas and reading and thinking and journaling and writing. So
you could finish Moby Dick.
Absolutely. It was long enough retreat. So yes, it would be nice to do something that wasn't totally defined by its sort of output requirement, which is what, deadline driven articles and books and things like that.
Yeah.
Need to be. I've been on a couple of like sort of bona fide meditation retreats where it's just you and the other people, but it's not, you don't have,
you're not really communicating.
Bring things to do. You're right. And you're sort of, you're not communicating, but they're actually very weirdly communal in a really interesting way. I don't know if you've done any of these, like
I've done a couple of silent meditation retreats.
Right.
Yeah. And it's it's a really distinct environment. I mean, I love it because I love not having to talk, believe it or not, given what I do. But there's you get a clear sense of everybody's personality, even though you're not exchanging words, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the ones that I've done, it's actually like, the not very rigorously policed, but the instruction is A, that it takes place in silence, but B, that like people walk around with downcast eyes, so you barely even see the other people. Yeah. You're certainly not sort of gesturing in order to avoid having to speak. And even then, you have a sense of who people are and what the mood of the overall gathering is.
At the one I went to, I shared a room with someone who couldn't stop miming. And she just, we were allowed eye contact, but she hadn't really truly got the memo about the point of the not talking. And she would just keep like frantically trying to mime things at you. And it's like, you don't get this at all, do you? Why are you here? Anyway, by the end of the week, she's snogged the other bloke there. So
the ones I attended, there were times when you could speak, and you weren't going to be told off for needing to know the answer to a question about dinner or something, right? But the spirit of it was very much away from communication, and I sort of loved that. I'm much patchier in terms of having any kind of disciplined, formal meditation practice when I'm on my own, and I might use this retreat for that as well, to be able to sort of sink into that sort of doing nothing kind of place.
That sounds lovely. Now, we asked about a couple of things that you might bring with you. The first was an object from home that was comforting or familiar, or something that you might want in the house with you. And then the other was a sort of cultural artifact, if you like, something to amuse or entertain or inspire you while you're there. So first of all, what object might you bring with you from home?
This was a hard one. I don't seem to be a sort of object collecting person, or sort of I don't have many sort of physical objects that I treasure for themselves. I perhaps should. I was recently asked, while in the process of drawing up a will, to put a ballpark value on the possessions that I own, sort of considering them separate from my wife, who was asked the same question in the same conversation. And I was like, a couple £100. It's like, I really don't have a few
pairs of socks.
Right. No, I just don't have things that I cherish materially. And I don't say that to try to sound like I think that's a wonderful thing. I actually don't think it is necessarily.
Some people are just not very sentimental about objects. I think I'm quite similar.
Yeah. Right. So it's definitely hard to think of something that I would want to bring like that. I guess I'm not allowed things here for this question that are sort of directly useful. Like, I would want to bring a lovely journal to write in, that I would know exactly what shop I would get it from and which journal it is and all the rest of it.
Do you always write in the same kind of journel?
Well, I think I might have just switched my loyalty in the last few months.
Wow.
But yeah,
that's big.
So, yeah. Do you want the branded details?
Yes, obviously.
I mean, I've been writing in look term journals for a long time. People who are into notebooks will certainly be familiar with these, and they are really, really great. The hardbacked A5 narrow-lined versions. But I was recently back in New York and went to a shop that you may know of, called Goods for the Study, which is it's run by the bookseller McNally Jackson. It's another great New York bookshop, but they have these separate.
What a bookshop that is!
Yes, they have this separate location, and I bought a hardcover lined, fabric covered notebook from them, which has won me over.
Ooh. So now you've chosen one that's really awkward to get hold of.
Yeah, right. I'll have to order them and become one of those pretentious people who orders their notebooks from overseas. There's so many factors that can go wrong with a notebook, right? Paper texture and bleed through, and whether it lies flat or whether you want it to lie flat, and all the rest of it. The only thing missing from the Goods for the Study own notebooks is they need a little ribbon for keeping one's place. But I can cope without that. Yeah, I can cope without a little ribbon.
Fair enough. So, I always have a Rhodia softback A5, normally the same colour, but recently my colour went up in price by a lot, and there was another colour that was half the price, and I was like, oh, I can't live with myself if I don't go for the other colour. So at the
Aren't
moment,
they only
I'm in
orange and black, right? Don't you just have to choose? Oh no, okay.
No.
Oh, they do all
So
sorts
now I'm on
All right.
weird turquoise. I normally have the blue,
Yeah.
but I'm on the kind of weird turquoise, and I feel bad about it. I've bought 3, and now I'm just longing to get back to the blue. But yeah, the same.
It's the same with Leuchtturm. Though I try not to buy them via Amazon if I can avoid it. But when you do, you find that there's like teal and fuchsia in massive quantities available tomorrow, but just the black ones are just like there's some world shortage of the black ones. It's a supply chain issue. Sort it out, Leuchtturm.
Anyway, so you're going to bring your fancy new McNally Jackson beautiful cloth-bound notebook, and yes. I think that is quite right. Is there a special pen as well, or are you not so fussy about pens?
Again, I feel like this is a good sign. I'm becoming a bit more flexible about these things in my old age. I used the Sakura Micron
yes, they're
felt
nice.
tips for. I'm not like a fountain pen. Yeah.
You can just tip ink into those.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Little did I know. I spent huge amounts on those over the years. I'm not a fountain pen person. I don't know if you are a fountain pen person.
No, I can't be bothered. Too much faff.
That's a whole other thing.
Not enough time in my life for a fountain pen.
I have found that these uni pin fine line felt sort of fiber tipped pens, 0.3 thickness, if you need to know,
nice.
Do the same job as those other ones, but they don't wear out, and the point fade out after like 3 days. So it's a cost saving measure.
The obsession with the right pen is real. I fully appreciate that you've shared that. Thank you.
I can't believe I could have put ink into those Sakura ones.
Yeah, you can. I love a refillable pen, you see. So it sort of assuages some of the guilt that I feel about how much I throw away in my life. So yeah, I'm a big refill girl. Okay, so you're bringing your notebook and pen. What cultural artifacts would you have with you that you could look at, listen to, watch, read? I will let you have Moby Dick for free because it's such a great novel and you should finish it. Okay.
Yeah, I just stopped at the bits that were like the Wikipedia entry on Wales, basically.
That's the great bits. You've just got to live in those. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think if I know what's coming, it might work. I'm a bit scared to mention this because I think you may know it, and anyone listening may know it way better than I do, but I think I will take 4 quartets, TS Eliot, because I know it deeply and love it, and I'm really kind of not a poetry person, full stop, but because so many different paths keep leading me back to this specific work, and I'm so aware from my early attempts to engage with it that it is about so many of the things that I'm fascinated by. So I'm taking this not because I know and love it and can talk eloquently about it to you now, Katherine. Just a heads up.
Test you. It's fine. We both did a social sciences degree. We're both like literary pretenders. We know this.
But because this might be the time to let those words sink under my skin, and it's very evident reading those poems to the extent that I already have, that they're treading the same terrain as all sorts of Zen writing I've enjoyed, and work by Heidegger that I certainly haven't enjoyed but tried to understand.
But we had to read that in our first year, right? So
yeah, right. There's a Zen teacher. There's a meditation teacher called Shinzen Young, who I'm a follower of and wrote briefly about in 4,000 Weeks. Who has a lecture series about how these poems by Eliot basically follow the path that he thinks of as the path to, spiritual enlightenment, whatever that means. So as a sort of Buddhist teaching tool. So, I got to figure out what's going on there.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, I think you and T.S. Eliot have got a preoccupation with time in common and with mortality. So I feel like you're kind of kindred spirits in maybe in very different formats, but there's definitely a bond there across time.
That's wonderful to hear. And I do think that, I would need to be, I definitely have like an inferiority complex when it comes to high poetry. I definitely sort of, the thing that kicks in immediately is like, I'm not the sort of person who can understand this stuff.
I haven't been trained to do this,
Right, and I intend to challenge that.
That sounds wonderful.
In my cabin by the sea.
Some lovely meditative reading. Okay, well, I'm afraid that once you've absorbed yourself fully in the four quartets, the time will eventually come for you to leave, which feels quite sad, actually. I feel like we're just in full flow. Oh, how will you know when it's time to go? Like, do you reach a point with this kind of thing where you get homesick or you get fed up of your own company, or would you go on forever until someone stopped you?
Oh, definitely the former. This has been I've been aware of this since I was quite a young adult. I would go off on sort of week-long excursions on my own to the Scottish Highlands or something. And then like day 4, I'd be like, oh, this should have been a 4-day trip. Because now
a week was too much.
Right, now it's just my own company. And that's certainly become much more the case as part of our family, right? It's not that I don't want peace and quiet to myself, and in many ways feel it more and more acutely the more engaged you are in family life, but also that it's doesn't take very long to realize that that's like, those are the rhythms of my life now. That is where I belong. It's not a question of escaping to somewhere else. I can benefit greatly from just like 2-3 days away in solitude, and it's usually a mistake to arrange for
to push it any
more
further.
than that. Yeah.
Oh, that push and pull of family life. It's so funny. I mean, it creates a need to get away from it that I didn't have before I had a child. I feel more desperate for my own time. But you miss them so quickly. It's so impossible to leave them for any amount of time. It's this very strange kind of feeling of being drawn away and pulled back at the same time almost. It changes you on a cellular level, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, on good days, my day-to-day life looks a bit like, 4 or 5 hours of retreat.
Yeah.
An hour or 2 of admin, and then the rest of it is in the family fully. And I've had to get like quite conscious about the thresholds between those things, because otherwise it goes totally wrong, and you always feel you should be in the other in the other place. So luckily at the moment I have a sort of 15-minute commute. It's hilarious to call it a commute. Between the room that I rent to work in and home, over the moor top.
That sounds idyllic. That's a retreat in itself.
No, it kind of is. So, you dodge the sheep and wait for the cars to pass on the roads that are too narrow for 2 cars. And that's given me just enough time to be in a different frame of mind by the time I walk through the door.
I have a similar thing. I have a little place that I write just along the coast, and it takes me about 20-25 minutes to walk there. And that walk, that's a really great amount of time. It doesn't feel like a commute, but there's a switch that happens in the process of that walk.
I wish I was walking. That would be the ideal thing, but that would take me like an hour and 20 minutes or something. So.
That's fair enough. That's okay. You are in the middle of nowhere, literally. You might find a barn in another field, but that's the best you can hope for.
Yeah.
And is there anything that you bring back home with you from your retreat? An idea or an object, whatever it is? Like, what do you bring back when you're done?
Oh, I would definitely bring back like pebbles from the beach that stop looking amazing as soon as you get them home, because they're not covered in glistening seawater. And I think, as we we've just been speaking about it. But I believe this is one definition of introversion, right? Not that you necessarily prefer to be alone, but that you recharge your energy alone and
By being alone, yeah.
and spend it in company as opposed to the other way around. So I come back with like rekindled enthusiasm for not being alone, which I think is great. And so I think in that sense, it's I often think of the times I have alone, even just like 45 minutes that I fight very hard for to write in my journal first thing in the morning before anyone else has woken up, as kind of a place from which to go out into the rest of the day and the world. So I think a retreat could serve as a version of that as well.
You've charged up your aloneness battery. It's interesting how introverts are quite often morning people or very late night people. Like we need that little bit of time when nobody else is there. And I think I've been pushed earlier and earlier in my waking just to avoid everybody else over the last few years.
Absolutely, yeah. And the mistake, for me anyway, the mistake is thinking that in any way means that your ideal life would be spent doing that all the time, right? That is not true.
Yeah, I would like a bit more sleep really, but I am happy to get up early just so that I get at least an hour before I have to deal with anybody else. I'm a morning person, but I don't want to talk or do exercise or have anything on my agenda. I just want to exist for an hour before I have to deal with stuff.
Yeah. And like everyone should get enough sleep, and it's not right to cheat yourself on that. But also there is something unique about the specific state of being up slightly earlier than you should be, which I've always valued, actually. I don't know, there's something...
And it's very dreamy. Nice, it's very dreamy time, I think. You're still slightly asleep, really, I think. And there's... I don't know, the barriers are down a bit more for me. It's before I've got my head in the way. Well, Oliver, thank you. It has been so lovely hearing about your retreat. And I don't think it was an existential crisis at all. In fact, I think it was a sign that you've got the right life. That's amazing.
Oh, brilliant. That's good to
hear.
I'm glad you think that.
Not to want to retreat anywhere else, but something that's a simulacrum of where you live already, but maybe with a bit more sea. I mean, that's pretty good to me.
I do want to do the go and spend a week or two in the city just socialising thing as well. So we could record
a separate podcast.
That's
about
my
that
new
too.
plan, right? The anti-retreat. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, my porridge is... Sorry, I can't call it porridge. I've got to call it oatmeal because it does not conform to the Scottish model. My oatmeal is just coming up to the boil. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that, but it's making those lovely puttering, bubbling sounds. And I am now giving it a good stir because I learnt this on the Golden Spurtle. This releases the natural creaminess of the oats. I don't think I'd win any competitions, unfortunately, but I will have a very good breakfast, and for that I am extremely grateful. I have been experimenting with steel cut oats, but they take an awfully long time compared to normal porridge oats, and like Oliver Burkeman, I'm conscious of how many weeks I have on this planet and how many things I have to do before then. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I really, really did. And I have similarly windswept tastes when it comes to relaxing. Interesting that, isn't it? I wonder if there is something in there about there needing to be a grit in the oyster, about, I don't know, wanting to feel challenged slightly even when we're taking away a lot of the challenges in everyday life. After I'd had loads of conversations about electricity of every living thing, and the idea of going on a long walk at a point of transition or crisis to figure out what to do, I thought a lot about how sometimes we create artificial crises when we know we need to make a decision or we know we need to start a process of metamorphosis. The porridge is going in the bowl, by the way. And I wonder if that's a very wise strategy sometimes, that we don't wait for the crisis to hit us. We create the crisis that we need in order to think straight, or to shake up our thinking, might be a better way to say it. Right, my porridge is ready. Thank you for listening to this early part of this new series. I hope you're really enjoying it. If you are, please tell your friends. It's very hard to share a podcast. So if you are enjoying it, please spread the word for me. If your app lets you press like on an episode, or, I don't know, give it star ratings, everything seems to be different. But I'd be so grateful of your support. And I will be back next week with another dream retreat and another long rambling talk about how we rest in difficult times. Until then, take lots of care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.